had to confront deeply entrenched stereotypes and challenge harmful practices which pass under the license of culture. Women and girls continue to face major hindrances such as lack of access to reproductive health services, low retention and transmission rates in education, low representation in the economic arena. Women and girls continue to bear a disproportionate labor burden, accentuated by the disparities in remuneration for similar work done. Women also suffer as victims of gender-based violence. Notwithstanding the above challenges, the women and girls of Kenya have marked their footprints on the path of our collective development. This country has achieved near gender parity in primary school enrollment and are towards progressive realization of parity in secondary and tertiary education. Our judiciary is staffed with women magistrates and judges up to the level of the Supreme Court. Today we have record numbers of women in the Senate, in the National Assembly. We have women as deputy governors and speakers of county assemblies. There is deliberate effort to incorporate women in public sector leadership as demonstrated by the composition of women in the cabinet and in the offices of principal secretaries. Women are now highly recognized in business and enterprise. Consequently, notwithstanding the status quo, we recognize and celebrate the place of the Kenyan woman. We recognize her contribution to the struggle for our independence, to the nurturing of learning and development, to the growth of our economy, to the defense of our nation, and to the leadership and management of our various sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, the government's agenda on gender equality and women's empowerment is guided by the Constitution, Vision 2030, and the second medium-term plan, as well as other national policies and laws. The government has committed itself to implement a number of specific measures in the furtherance of women's empowerment. These measures include enhancement of education and health for women and girls through the free primary and secondary education program, free maternity programs, extension of credit and enterprise for women through Uwezo and the Women's Enterprise Firms, the 30% affirmative action policy for women, youth, and persons with disabilities in public procurement, among others. The state continues to have robust engagements with multiple international and regional women's rights mechanisms, such as the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. The government continues to enact policy and legislation to further entrench women's rights. For example, the Persons Deprived of Liberty Act, the Victims Protection Act, Prevention, Protection and Assistance to Internally Displaced Persons Act, and the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act, the Domestic Violence Act, the Marriage Act, and all this legislation that I am very proud to say have been enacted during my tenure in office as Attorney General. Very proud. Ladies and gentlemen, the need to bring more women into political leadership cannot be gainsaid. Women have historically been marginalized and often struggle to gain entry into the male-dominated political sector. Women don't have an old boys network, and I'm not suggesting that there be established an old girls network, but there is need to be intentional about opening doors to capable women whenever this can be done. I'm proud to associate myself with the transformative movement to build a sustainable architecture for women's political participation in this country. Contrary to the embellished narrative, My office has diligently sought to ensure women's political participation is entrenched in our political processes. Through proactive effort, my office facilitated a negotiated settlement between the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association, KEWOPA, and the Gender Commission to consolidate and harmonize various constitutional amendment proposals to develop the two-thirds gender principle. And I won't say much about that because Madam Chair has spoken about it very eloquently. This followed the initial interventions that we sought from the Supreme Court in its advisory capacity and the subsequent setting up of the technical working group that worked under my office and with the leadership of the Honorable Chair of the Gender Commission. This Constitution Amendment Bill that we have all agreed upon seeks to provide a mechanism to give effect to Article 81 of the Constitution. The bill partially endorses the proposals of the Technical Working Group on the two-thirds gender principle and further provides an amendment to Article 97 and Article 98 to provide for such number of seats such as to ensure that no more than two-thirds of the members of elected public bodies shall be of the same gender. The second is an election laws amendment bill to enhance the mechanisms for presentation of women as candidates for election in Parliament and the County Assembly. The bill proposes to place responsibility on political parties to make all necessary efforts to support and sustain women's candidature in elections and subsequently to elective seats. The bills include inter alia proposals such as party lists developed from best winning loser candidates, parties' overall candidates for an election reflecting the one-third principle in all counties, including strongholds of parties, establishment of a women's fund to support election, a sunset clause of 20 years for affirmative action, a cap on affirmative action terms, etc., etc. The Omnibus Amendment Bill seeks to ensure that the use of the top-up constitutional provision remains latent. Unfortunately, since we agreed on this consensus, which we thought would help us surmount this very difficult constitutional impasse, there have been other proposals. There is a proposal, I see my good friend, the Honorable Member for Kibra is here. There have been proposals for a green amendment campaign. There have been other proposals, Punguza Mizigo campaign, and other amendments that have been made, including amendments by the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee, the Honorable Samuel Chepkonga. He has his own two bills that I think are called popularly the Chepkonga bills. One of my concerns, I am sure I share these concerns with the chair of the Gender Commission and many well-meaning supporters of the emancipation of women in this country, is that the more bills we have, the more we muddy the waters. The more we muddy the waters, then the less quickly we can bring this to realization. The challenge of women representation does not lie within government bodies alone, but it cuts across all sectors and all organizations, whether public or private. Therefore, the tasks enumerated above require our collective effort in all forms and in all arms of the national government, the county government, the commissions, civil society organizations such as yourselves, the private sector, and the public at large. I therefore call upon all the leading institutions to continue championing and advancing the realization of the rights of women in Kenya. I trust, ladies and gentlemen, that your deliberations today will interrogate all the proposals that are